Thank you. Eric?
Well, Jamie, as we've been reporting all morning, it is stare-down time in Washington. President Obama and the Democrats versus the House Republicans on the so-called fiscal cliff. You know, after weeks of negotiations, publicly at least, talks have stalled as the two sides battle it out over tax hikes and entitlement reform. But what can really be done about what some consider our nation's out-of-control spending? A member of the House Majority, Pennsylvania Congressman Tim Murphy, joins us now. He's chairman of the House Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee for the Energy and Commerce Committee. Congressman, good to see you in person. Welcome.
Great to be with you.
To New York this morning. Who do you think is going to blink? I mean, President Obama says he wants those tax hikes to go up on the wealthy. The Republicans say no. What do you think will happen?
Well, we both better get together and come up with a solution. That's what the American family wants. And all these other issues, we have to remember it's what takes place, not at the 30,000-foot level or within the Beltway, it's what takes place at the kitchen table level. And that's where people are very concerned. Will they have a job tomorrow? Will their children have a job in the future? And that means we have to deal with the deficit. We have to deal with the spending. We cannot continue to do this. The president's issue of wanting to have unlimited power to raise the deficit whenever he wants is like taking the brakes off the car and hitting the accelerator when you're headed towards that cliff. I think that thing will not be a negotiable issue. But the other ones, we're going to have to come up with some ways. And the Republicans have offered some things to deal with some revenue. The president has. These discussions will go on, and we're going to have to solve that.
Overall, as you say, I mean, this deficit and the spending, we're at $16 trillion, and it goes up and up and up. And it's going to affect us. It affects our children, our grandchildren. What realistically do you see happening? Is there any way that the spending can be slowed down without maybe throwing us into a recession?
Well, the spending can be slowed down, particularly with regard to government spending. Let's keep this in mind. Over the last 5 months, when you look at the upward swing now, the improvement in people being hired, in the employment rate, 73%, according to the Department of Labor, 73% of those new jobs is federal government, state government, and local government. We want to see it in the private sector, and that's where the private sector is really very worried. This is where people have their jobs. This is where people go to work every day, and that's where they're still hesitant. They are looking that the government has to stop spending because a big part of our increased spending is payment off the debt. And people know that that's going to continue more taxes, and that's going to hurt the families.
Do you think we can pay off the debt? I mean, how do we get to that point?
Well, it is a matter. Let's say, for example, the proposal that Speaker Boehner has said we want to deal with some of the entitlements, with some of the deductions. You know, you can have whatever tax rate you want, but if you can deduct so much of that and still end up with a low tax rate, we haven't solved the problem. I think it is a reasonable thing to offer the president says, look, we recognize there's a lot of loopholes and deductions here. We ought to close off and limit that. I don't think we should deal with charitable deductions, but other elements there.
That's like house mortgages. Everyone relies, a lot of people rely on
Sure.
deducting your mortgage. You think there should be a limit on that, or could that be eliminated?
Well, it could be set, for example, as an annual cap of what that can be. And so if you have 2 or 3 homes, well, you're not going to be able to deduct all that, but your one home, you could set a level for that. That scenario where you can still have a lot of revenue. Of course, the president keeps saying tax rates, tax rates, tax rates. And I think there he's trying to tap into some of the anger and angst he presented during the election. If there's anything I've learned in my 35-plus years as a psychologist, is if you try and get people to act out of anger and rage, you're going to end up making some bad mistakes. And what we have to look at is the issue is the deficit, and the issue is getting people back to work. You know, when the president talks about if we don't deal with this fiscal cliff, the average family will see their taxes go up by $2,000 a year. Well, let's remember, in the last few years, their gasoline bill has increased by $2,500 a year. So we need to be dealing with natural gas issues and oil and gasoline prices and energy prices.
Yeah, right. You're not only a member of Congress, and you're also a medical doctor and a psychiatrist, too, so maybe you can get everybody on the couch down in Washington. You mentioned taxes, taxes, taxes. Here's an interesting take from columnist Rob at the Arizona Republican. Let me get your reaction to this. He said, quote, "What Obama is really trying to do is force Republicans to finance, through higher taxes and increased borrowing, the size of the federal government Obama thinks is appropriate. And Obama likes his government supersized. Republicans in the House undoubtedly won't and shouldn't agree to finance Obama-level spending. After all, they were elected in 2010 to put a brake on Obama's spending and were returned to power in this election." The Democrats say, but the president won re-election. So, in your point of view, who is right?
Well, the president also continued to talk about reducing the deficit. He is aware of this serious problem that's continuing to grow. And we do have a role as the House. It is our constitutional role to put the brakes on spending, and that's something we're going to continue to push for. It has to be done. Everybody seems to get it in Washington.
And finally, do you think there'll be a deal?
I think there will be a deal. I don't think there'll be one before the end of the year. We have to do that.
Okay, we have to do it, says Congressman Tim Murphy. Congressman, thank you.
Great
to see you in person. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us today, Congressman. Very nice to see you. Well, the escalating political conflict we've been telling you about in Egypt is sparking concerns over the